Over here for a minute. A couple of things before we get to our guests today. For the Senate members, I'm going to actually assign a bill since we're here. We have a bill by Senator Rogers, which gives the state school superintendent to employ and the right to employ and dismiss employees. In other words, be able to hire and fire his own staff. I know that's a unique concept for people, but we actually have to pass a bill to do that because it's evidently needed clarification. And that's going to go to the academic support subcommittee, chaired by Senator Stone. And so we've got a bill summary on it, but that's basically what the bill does. Mr. Chairman, do you want to say anything at this point?
Members out there, if they come set up here where the audience, we have people standing. So one of you members, if you don't mind, come set up here.
Judy, you all can come on up here. Come on if you want.
The governor's office people, all you come on up. We love you. So come on up here.
All you people with yellow tags that work for the governor or representatives, we don't mind you all coming up here. We just feel like with these new legislative badges in the House, we think a lot of these people are aides anyway, based upon what I'm looking at. So,
if there's a seat, tell me if there's a seat by me. Raise your hand.
Come on, folks, just all fill in and get a seat.
If there's a seat by you, raise your hand where people can sit and let you sit down.
This is like church, folks. Just you go to the middle.
Baptists on front. All right, those in the back, I guess they want to sit there. Let's go.
Okay. Okay. I'd also like to recognize the distinguished superintendent from Gwinnett County, Alvin Wilbanks, is here today with us. Is he back there, David, with you? Raise your hand, Alvin, so people can see the... Correct me, it's Urban School District of the Year, is not the award Gwinnett County won? All right, well, thank you very much for being here with us. Do we have any other superintendents in the room? Or teachers? If you're a teacher, raise your hand.
All right.
Thank you all for being with us. Here comes our timeout table teacher. Okay. Okay, we're going to start out, first of all, talking about Race to the Top. A little background on that. Aaron Haynes will, with the Deputy Chief of Staff to Governor Deal. Teresa McCartney's with her, who's the implementation director, as well as Katie Wood, who's a teacher on the implementation team. Aaron, come on over, and we're going to put you at right here. India. Yeah. And is India here with you as well?
Where's India?
India is the governor's education policy czar. Back. Raise your hand again.
Raise it, India, where they find you.
Notice my bipartisan comment. I called you a czar back there. So, okay, Aaron. All right.
Oh, wait, maybe off. Do we need it turned on up here, guys? Again. The image. Main menu.
Oh, technological one. You're talking to Brooks and Fran. Somebody come up here that knows what they're doing.
Image off there. There you go.
We got it? Okay.
Got to read.
Now what?
Only took two of them. Two of us.
Now what do we do?
He's going to take care of it down there.
But she needs her microphone.
She got it up there.
We ready?
We can't turn her mic on because you got to turn it on.
He's controlling it. You do her mic from there? Microphone control? Try it. No, still on.
All right, Aaron, you're on.
I'm on? Okay. Well, thank you. I pressed it. It's on. It's on. Thank you, Chairman Miller and Chairman Coleman, for giving me the opportunity to come and talk about Race to the Top. And as Chairman Miller mentioned, Teresa McCartney is here, and she is serving as the implementation director at the Department of Education. And Kathy Wood, I think, is also with her. And Kathy is a classroom teacher that was in the Marietta City School System that we recruited to come and serve on the Race to the Top team. And so she joined the team in January and is going to have a big role in helping on the teacher effectiveness work. And so Teresa may step in here at some point to provide an update on some things. Well, the great news is that Georgia is one of 11 states that won the Race to the Top competition. And last year, when during the legislative session, we had submitted the application but did not yet know if we had won. And in August, we were named a Race to the Top winner. For those of you that don't know, Race to the Top was a $4 billion fund in the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, so in the stimulus package that was put out for states to compete for those funds to take on education reform focused on 4 specific areas. Those 4 areas are really looking at teacher and leader effectiveness, and so looking at our ability to recruit, prepare, reward, thank you, reward and retain our most effective teachers and leaders, looking at standards and assessments, and so ensuring that our students are being taught standards that prepare them for college and career, and that we're then assessing students well throughout that process. That we have data systems, and after I speak today, we have some people here from the Hall County School System that are going to demonstrate the student information system, which I know is something that that these 2 committees have had a tremendous amount of interest in over the years, and so I think you'll be pleased with that progress. And then the last focus area within Race to the Top is on turning around our lowest achieving schools within the state. Georgia was awarded $400 million through the Race to the Top fund, and those funds will be spent over a 4-year period. And our vision within our application is really similar to what any of you would have as your vision for improving education in our state. It is to equip all Georgia students through effective teachers and leaders, and then through creating the right conditions in our schools and classrooms with the knowledge and skills to empower them to graduate from high school, to be successful in college and career, and then to compete not only with their peers here in the United States, but to compete with their peers globally. And so that's our vision. That's what we are aiming to do. We have 26 local school systems around the state that are partnering with the state to implement Race to the Top. And those 26 systems represent 41% of the students in Georgia. And they are across the state. We have a great diversity in those districts. There are very large districts. Superintendent Wilbanks is here today, and Gwinnett County is a partnering district through Race to the Top. And of course, it's the largest district in the state and one of the highest performing districts, not only in the state, but in the nation. To very, very small districts. We have districts in the state that have several hundred students, districts that have had historic struggles, and those that have been really trend-setting, very high-performing districts over time. And that diversity in those districts and the spread of the districts across the state is one of the many things that we believe is going to make Georgia one of the most successful states within Race to the Top. Obviously, an issue that we are focused on is closing the achievement gap. And if you look at the student population of the students within these 26 districts, these students represent about 46% of the students in poverty in our state. They represent 53% of our African American students, and they represent 48% of our Hispanic students.
Aaron, excuse me. Will your slides be available to people when?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you all, if you want to write it down, fine. But the slides will be available to committee members.
Absolutely. I'll email it to Jana and Donna after the meeting.
And I also brought talking points to provide to every member, and basically that's outlined.
Thank you.
Yes. So the purpose of the Race to the Top dollars, as I said, there are $400 million, and the purpose of those dollars is to accomplish what we committed to do within our application. And so unlike some of the other federal dollars that have come down for education in the last few years, the Education Jobs Funds or the stabilization dollars, these dollars cannot be used to supplant state or local dollars. They can't be used to backfill where districts have had to make cuts. They can only be used to accomplish what was committed to in the Race to the Top application. Of the $400 million, $200 million of that is divided among the 26 partnering districts, and it is divided among those districts based on the Title I funding formula. And so it varies from district to district, and if you're interested in those specific allocations, we can certainly get you that information. The remaining $200 million stays at the state level to enact initiatives that benefit every school district within the state. And so the data system is just one example, and you're gonna see some progress today that has been made on the data system. The work around standards and assessments, all of that work will benefit every district in the state, as well as much of the work within the teachers and leaders portion of the application. Within our Race to the Top application, it is really centered around the idea of coming up with a single effectiveness system, a way in which we can measure the effectiveness of our schools, of our school systems, of teachers within the classroom, and of principals that are leading our individual schools. The application sets forth that we will develop a single teacher effectiveness measure, so a single way of measuring the effectiveness of teachers. And we are working with our partnering districts on developing that teacher effectiveness system, and that has a number of components. And there are really 4 components that go into both teacher effectiveness and the leader effectiveness. The first of those is the qualitative rubrics-based evaluation. And so when a principal or a fellow teacher is going into a teacher's classroom to evaluate that teacher, this is the tool that they will use in evaluating that teacher. And we have an existing evaluation system in the state called Class Keys, and we have a number of districts around the state that have been piloting Class Keys. And through Race to the Top, one of the things we're working to do with our partnering districts is to really pull out those elements within the Class Keys evaluation system that most get to the effectiveness of the teacher. And so looking at things that really get to classroom instruction, the teacher's ability to differentiate instruction to meet the needs of the various learners in that class. Those types of things will be the primary things we'll be looking to in adjusting that evaluation tool. The second element within the teacher effectiveness measure is the value added or the growth component. And is another area that we're working with our 26 partnering districts to determine the right growth model for Georgia in measuring growth over time. And that's the focus of this, is really measuring academic progress over time and not looking at did an individual student, did they meet an absolute bar, but focus far more on the growth of those students. And so an example, if I'm a 5th grade reading teacher and a student comes to my class reading on a 3rd grade level, we wouldn't necessarily expect that student to be reading on a 6th grade level by the end of 5th grade, which is ideally where we want all students to be. But for that student, the student was reading on a 3rd grade level. But what we would expect is that for a year's worth of instruction, we would see a year's worth of learning from that student. And by developing a growth model, we will have the ability to measure that over time. Moving forward, 50% of both the teacher effectiveness measure and the leader effectiveness measure, and that leader effectiveness measure is for both principals and assistant principals, will be based on that growth component. The third element is a reduction in the student achievement gap. And so for an individual teacher, that's looking within that teacher's classroom to the highest performing subgroup of students and seeing if the gap is being narrowed between that highest performing subgroup and the lowest performing subgroup of students within that class. The last element is a quantitative measure. So really looking at a 360 evaluation and looking at student surveys, parent surveys, and that would be one element of the teacher and both the leader effectiveness measure. There is some good work being done across the country on the use of surveys. The Measures of Effective Teaching project that some of you may have heard of that the Gates Foundation is currently funding has done a good bit of research on this and has done a great amount of work on validating that to those academic gains of students. And so we'll be looking at that work and other work, and most importantly, partnering with our 26 districts, with our education associations across the state, and with the state agencies that are involved in this, from the Professional Standards Commission to the University System of Georgia, all the way down to pre-K, higher ed. Many of those agencies will be involved in this work moving forward. Our partnering districts through Race to the Top have committed to using the data we learn once we have developed the teacher effectiveness measure and the leader effectiveness measure, committed to using that data to drive the talent management decisions within their districts. And so determining the professional development that's needed, compensation decisions, promotion, retention, recertification, and then interventions and dismissals. So all of those things that go into talent management at the district level and at the school level, this teacher effectiveness measure and the leader effectiveness measure will be used to drive those decisions. In addition to that, we will make career ladder opportunities available for teachers. And this is something that, for a teacher, one of the things that you often see happen in education is those that are really, their gift is really teaching. They often leave the classroom and go into leadership positions. And it's not always because that's really what they want to do. It's often because that's a route to be able to gain additional income. And we want to create a route for those teachers that want to stay in the classroom, that's where their gift is, that's where they're best serving students, to be able to do that from a financial standpoint. And so if those teachers are willing to take on additional responsibilities within their school, they would be able to earn additional salary for taking on those responsibilities. In addition to that, we will award individual performance salary increases for teachers based on the teacher effectiveness measure, and then for school leaders based on the leader effectiveness measure. This will be an opt-in system for all current educators. And so for any teacher that is currently teaching, it will be an opt-in system. So if that teacher chooses not to opt in, he or she could remain on the current salary schedule. But for new teachers, they would go into a performance-based salary structure moving forward. It's really important, though, when we talk about performance pay, to not jump to performance pay before we get all the performance elements worked out. We won't be in a place of moving to the pay element until we have that data and the growth model developed, until we have the teacher evaluation system in a place where it is differentiating among teachers and really doing a great job of providing teachers with the feedback that they need to improve their instruction for students.
Aaron, one thing here, you and I have talked about this, so
Sure.
people understand, here in the state of Georgia, if we plan to go to performance pay down the road, if we do this right, Race to the Top will be our pilot program. And if we have pitfalls, if we've got mistakes, if we've got things we need to fix, hopefully during this process, we will do it in Race to the Top before we ever implement this type of program throughout the state. I want to make that perfectly clear to people. This is an opportunity to use federal funds to get it right so we don't make the mistakes on the taxpayer of Georgia's dollar. So I just want to emphasize that point, particularly with teachers that have expressed concerns based upon things they've seen in the media or heard, etc. So please understand that this is our pilot program to look at this type of thing. Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, at the end of the Race to the Top grant period, there will have to be a legislative change, as you all know, in order to make that a statewide policy. And so Race to the Top provides an opportunity for us to test this with 26 districts that are extremely committed to this work and that have been wonderful partners in this work. And so it will be something that you'll, I know, certainly want to watch closely and evaluate the effectiveness of all of these initiatives as we move forward. In addition to the talent management decisions that I've already talked about, we will also adjust our teacher certification process. And this is work that Kelly Henson at the Professional Standards Commission and his team will be closely involved in. One of the things that we'll do is to create a teacher induction certificate. And this will be the certificate that anyone coming out of one of our colleges of education or that has entered into a Georgia TAP program, which is one of our alternative preparation routes, that they would initially earn what is called an induction certificate. It is a non-renewable certificate that they have for the first 3 years of teaching. In order to pass to receiving that clear renewable certificate, the teacher will have to show a threshold level on the teacher effectiveness measure before passing on to that clear renewable certificate. And so that gives us as a state an opportunity to provide additional professional development to that teacher to get the teacher where he or she needs to be before moving to the clear renewable certificate. And then moving forward, the teacher effectiveness measure will also be used in making decisions regarding the recertification of teachers every 5 years. One focus within Race to the Top was to really look at equitable distribution. So are we getting our best teachers where they're most needed? And we have a number of things within our Race to the Top plan to help encourage this. And one of those is the achievement gap reduction bonuses. And again, those teachers that are able to close the gap between their highest performing subgroups and the lowest performing subgroups would be eligible for a pay increase, as well as including signing bonuses to teachers that are willing to move to rural high-need schools. And this is certainly something we were extremely mindful in developing the application of our rural districts in Georgia. Georgia has the third largest rural student population. And so we were really mindful in developing these policies that we remember that the circumstances are just different in rural Georgia, and being able to partner with outside groups and able to recruit teachers to their districts. And so one of the things that will be available for rural schools and not for other districts will be these signing bonuses. They're contingent on the teacher remaining, having a high teacher effectiveness measure once they're in the classroom. In order to increase the pipeline of effective teachers coming into the profession, we are partnering with a number of outstanding organizations that have had a lot of success, some of them here in Georgia and some in other states. The first of those is Teach for America. Teach for America currently provides core members in Atlanta Public Schools and Fulton County. And through Race to the Top, we will be able to expand their reach in Georgia, and we'll have TFA core members not only in Atlanta Public Schools, but also in DeKalb County Schools, Gwinnett County Schools, and Clayton County Schools. The New Teacher Project has a different strategy than Teach for America in increasing that pipeline of teachers. They partner with local communities, and they come into those communities and develop a recruiting program for recruiting people within the community who did not go through a college of education but may be interested in teaching. And then they provide the professional development to prepare those members of the community to teach. And after they're in the classroom, they come in, they observe, they continue to provide professional development for them. And so we will be partnering with the New Teacher Project in 4 regional clusters around the state. And so there are 4 areas outside the metro area where they will be partnering. And we've already kicked off that work and begun that work. They've been an outstanding partner, and so some of your local districts may be working with the New Teacher Project already. UTeach is really focused on the higher education side of things. They began in Texas and have had a lot of success in their colleges to be able to recruit math and science majors to go into teaching. So those that are currently going through the process, they may be a math major, a science major, an engineering major, but through UTeach they are trained to go into the classroom and to teach. And so we will be partnering with some of our higher education institutions in the state through UTeach. In addition to that, and again being mindful of rural Georgia, we also will give districts in rural Georgia the ability to develop what we called a grow your own teacher plan. And so it may be partnering with a technical college in their community or a private college in their community. That we haven't drawn the parameters tightly here. But for them to partner and really tell us what would meet the needs that they have in their individual communities for increasing their pipeline of effective teachers. And they could apply to the state for funds to do that work. So it summarizes a very large portion of the application that is focused on teacher and leader effectiveness. And that is a very high-level summary. If any of you are interested in more details on that work, I'd be more than happy to sit down with you personally. We had a meeting with our partnering districts last week, and we're focused on the teacher and leader effectiveness work, primarily on the growth model and the value-added model, and beginning to lay the groundwork for that decision. We now have 3 steering committees with our partnering districts and outside partners as well. One focused on that growth model and value-added component, so seeing all the research, all the options that are there, understanding our current assessments and what makes the best sense for Georgia, and those districts will work to make that decision. Another group is focused on that evaluation tool, and so modifications of class keys, and they will be working on that, and of course working with very closely on all of these. Teachers will be involved in all of these and be very much part of the decision-making process. The third steering committee is focused on those other quantitative measures, and this is the one that we have the least concrete idea about at this point, but looking at surveys of parents and teachers and other quantitative measures that can be part of the evaluation process, so that we're not just looking at one way of determining the effectiveness of teachers. We're looking at a variety of ways, and that teachers will have input throughout that process, not only in making these decisions and developing this, but moving forward. So that summarizes that portion of the application. I'll quickly hit on the last 3 sections. The second section is focused on standards and assessments. The state of Georgia was a leader in the Common Core state standards movement. This was a state-led process that began 2 years ago to really develop common standards that we could all agree upon in math and English language arts. So what would be expected of our students in those subjects? States work together, partnering with the National Governors Association and other organizations to develop these standards, and now over 40 states have adopted these standards. That has been a real game changer in education, to have an agreement by over 40 states of what students need to know in order to be college and career ready by leaving high school is really powerful, and we're excited about this work. These standards, the great news for our students and our teachers is they are very well aligned to the Georgia Performance Standards that were adopted in the state a number of years ago. And so on the math side, there's about a 91% alignment. On the English language arts side, about an 87% alignment. So very closely aligned. The Department of Education is working diligently to be in a place to fully roll out the Common Core state standards a year and a half from now. So beginning in the 2012 school year, to fully roll those out in our schools. Included within Race to the Top will be professional development for all of our math and English language arts teachers, so face-to-face training for those teachers on the Common Core standards, and so this will provide the funds needed to do that professional development that teachers really need and really want in that area. In addition to that, when Race to the Top was started, Secretary Duncan, the U.S. Secretary of Education, set aside $350 million of the fund to focus on common assessments. So states that were willing to come together, following up on the Common Core state standards work, and agree upon assessments that could be used to measure student progress in math and English language arts. And so we are part of one of those groups. We are part of the PARC Consortia, and by the 2014-15 school year, there will be common assessments available that any state in the country can adopt those assessments and use them. In addition to having an assessment that a student can take by the end of high school that will tell us, are students college and career ready, which this has huge implications, not only in Georgia but nationally. And higher education partners across the country are already agreeing to say, when a student is found to be college and career ready, we will admit those students into our institutions, and we will admit those students without remediation for credit-bearing courses. And so that's something I know that so many of you have spent a lot of time and energy and effort working on, and it's an area that we need to continue to make progress. But that is a great thing that you know is on the horizon and is out there, and we will be working with the University System of Georgia, the Technical College System of Georgia, for that same commitment here in our state. In addition to that assessment, there will also be assessments developed that will be great tools in the hands of our teachers, so that they're not, many of our teachers spend a lot of additional time developing assessments for their classrooms, so that they know that we don't just need a summative assessment at the end of the school year. And so they're developing these formative assessments, but that is takes a tremendous amount of time to do that, particularly if you're a teacher that may have 5 preps in a day, so you're teaching 5 different subjects. Developing all those assessments is very time intensive. And through Race to the Top, we'll be able to have these assessments, formative and summative, that can be used in our classroom. And that will be certainly very valuable for our teachers and for our students. The third focus area within Race to the Top is on the data system. I won't spend much time on that because the following me you'll have a demonstration of our student data system. But essentially within Race to the Top, the focus is at two levels. Both that our teachers have the data that they need at their fingertips to make the right decisions for instruction of students. So they can see those students that are mastering fractions and those students that need additional time or some new way of teaching that. And they're able to see those that are progressing and may need more challenging work. And they can see that instantaneously, not at the end of the school year. In addition to that, one of the things you'll see today is that our teachers now will have, at the beginning of the school year, and those of you who are still classroom teachers or have been, you know how much time is spent at the beginning of the school year on this, but they will have at their fingertips in their data system that they're already used to logging into every day information on how the students that are now assigned to that teacher, how they fared on the last 4 years on our standardized test. Not only just did the student meet standards or not meet standards, but specifically which standards did the student struggle with. And so, to use fractions as an example again, at the beginning of the school year, I can see that Johnny did not understand fractions last year. That's an area he is really struggling with, and I can begin to provide that additional instruction already at the beginning of the year. I'm not waiting until the first 9 weeks of school to figure out that Johnny didn't understand fractions. And so, again, there'll be a demo of that today, but that is very powerful. In addition to that data at the student level, the second piece is the data that all of you want to know. Those of us who are state policy makers of, just an example, is pre-K having an effect? Our students that are in the Georgia pre-K program, are they more likely to be reading on grade level by 3rd grade? Are they more likely to graduate from high school? In a time of limited resources, these are all the questions that we all collectively want to have answered. And so the focus on the data system within Race to the Top is on both levels, both at the classroom and then for state policymakers. The last area within Race to the Top is focused on turning around our lowest achieving schools. Of our 26 partnering districts, in 17 of those districts there is either a school or multiple schools that were identified through the definition included in Race to the Top as one of the lowest achieving schools. And so for those schools, there's work already being done to partner with those districts to send in a kind of a team of turnaround experts, so people who have done this work in the past, to work with the school to identify what are the specific issues in that school. Is it that students in that school district are really struggling with math? I mean, is it some specific subject, or is it that the students are coming to school with so many outside issues that they're having trouble focusing on instruction during the day? And we will tailor the turnaround work based on what we're seeing in that diagnostic work that's ongoing by the Department of Education right now. There are 4 turnaround models within Race to the Top. The first of those is called the turnaround model, and it requires replacing the principal at the school and then replacing 50% of the staff. The second turnaround model is either a charter management organization or an education management organization, so converting the school to becoming a charter school. The third is to close the school. This can make sense at times when you may have 2 schools that are low performing, both are at half capacity, being able to move those into one building and really focus your energy and effort there. That can make sense in that case. And then the last is a transformation model. So it is a lot of different strategies, and with all of these, when we were developing the Race to the Top application, the educators and the state policymakers that worked on that came up with a number of things that in doing research that we have seen be successful in other states or in other districts. And so we have a large menu of things that we can work with districts, everything from extended day to infusion of graduation coaches or math coaches. And again, all of those strategies will depend on what we see in doing the diagnostic within the district. Two last points. The application focuses on STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math instruction. The General Assembly has had a strong commitment to improving STEM education in the state. 2 years ago, you all passed legislation that provided for differentiated pay for math and newly certified math and science teachers, and then increasing the pay for those in their first years of teaching up to a fifth-year salary. That is improving our ability to encourage people to go into the teaching profession, particularly in those subject areas. So thank you for your commitment to that work. Race to the Top calls for making science our second AYP indicator. And so currently most of our elementary and middle schools, for federal accountability, most of them choose attendance as their second indicator for federal accountability. Moving forward, this will apply to all districts in the state, not just to the 26, and it will make science their second indicator. And this is, again, to encourage a focus on science instruction. We will phase this in to give our districts time to allow teachers to get math and science endorsements, which are just additional coursework in math and science. And we will work with districts to phase that in. But that is certainly something that we believe will improve instruction in math moving forward. We're partnering with Seismic, which is at Georgia Tech. Some of you may be familiar with this, but they have done a lot of great work in the past on providing professional development for math and science teachers. They're also going to help us in developing additional math and science courses and courses that can be delivered through the virtual school. And then through the Georgia Virtual School, we will provide additional slots through the virtual school for students, and we'll focus those slots on STEM courses and also the development of STEM courses. Lastly, in developing the application, we wanted to have the ability, knowing that we certainly didn't think of all the innovative ideas, and there are districts out there that have great ideas and they just need the capital to be able to begin those things. We set aside approximately 10% of the state portion of the award. So $19.4 million is set aside in what is called the Innovation Fund. This fund is something that any district or any charter school in the state can apply and receive funds to do innovative things within their district that will improve student achievement. We haven't drawn the parameters all that tightly. They can focus on increasing the pipeline of educators. They can focus on applied learning opportunities for students, so hands-on opportunities for students in learning, but anything that can improve student achievement. Governor Deal talked in his inaugural address about focusing on STEM charter schools and would like to encourage districts to apply to the Innovation Fund for planning funds to begin those STEM charter schools. Many times could be a charter school that may serve students in multiple school districts, but really that have a focus on STEM education. And so that's there, and happy to meet with any of you personally to cover any more details. Teresa, any points you want to make on?
A couple of things here.
Sure.
First of all, Teresa, I don't know who prepared the handout, but after 12 years, I finally got a handout with 23 footnotes that actually explains what all the acronyms are. So I compliment you all on that. For those of us that are not in the education business, thank you so much for that. The other thing, too, I think it needs to be said, after you've heard Erin's presentation here for the last 30 minutes or so, I think you can understand her passion for this, and one of the primary reasons that Georgia was successful in being chosen for this honor is because of the lady sitting there. So, Erin, on behalf of all of us, we thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank
and
you.
Very much appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're going to set up for the next presentation, but I'm going to take two questions that I had until my buttons just lit up. I want to take the two while Donna sets it up for Bob's presentation.
Okay.
Kathy, I think you were first, and then Ed, I think you're second.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Erin, for all the incredible work. I have two sort of basic questions that I just need to get on the table. Last year, this legislative body chose not to do or not to act on some of the facets of this teacher and leader effectiveness component. And now we turn around and 26 school systems with 41% of the kids are going to be participating in those very items. Right. And the legislative piece of it, we hear, comes at the end of the dollars. So, number one, what is the legislative role in the policy decisions of Race to the Top? And how do we get involved in those decisions? And then number two, we're spending...
Kathy, you're going to get one.
This is just a part of the same question.
All right, I'll give you 1.5.
After these dollars go away, how are we going to replace them?
great questions. Last year there was a piece of legislation that essentially what that legislation would do is put many of the things that are within the Race to the Top application, and in that legislation it set up performance pay, but it did not set up performance pay until the end of the Race to the Top period. And the concern that we heard from members of the General Assembly is that there were so many unknowns at that point. There was not confidence in the data system, and we had not developed a growth model. The evaluation tool wasn't really where we needed the evaluation tool to be. And so through Race to the Top, we'll be able to work with these partnering districts that are committed to this work to work on all of those things and to evaluate the effectiveness of those, and then to bring it back to the General Assembly to act on those things or to change those things moving forward. So that's how we see that process moving, and certainly welcome any input of members of the General Assembly or thoughts as we move forward in that work. Your second question, remind me.
After these dollars go away, how do we pay for all this?
On your second question, I mean, we've committed to our districts that they are piloting this through Race to the Top. So, for instance, if they begin performance pay, they would not have an ongoing commitment with local dollars to continue that unless the General Assembly acted to do that and reallocated existing state resources to do that. They would not have an ongoing commitment, and we see that being the same across the board. We are certainly looking, though, we want to learn from this experience, and we want to see, are there areas that we need to reallocate resources? I hope we're going to learn things that save money and get better outcomes for students, and hopefully we'll do that, and we'll be able to bring that back to the General Assembly for changes on those things moving forward.
Aaron, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we're going to have to cut this off for now to go to the presentation. Bob, where are you? Swigum. Yeah, well, she's got to go to a meeting. That's part of the problem.
If y'all want to see Erin, she'll be glad to make an appointment with you and do this individually. This is something, because we could go on all day. She will.
She's in room 142 in the Capitol.
Yeah, just go back and see her.
It's a cave, so be careful when you go back there. Bob Swigum, where are you? Oh, come on up. Our next presenter is going to be Bob Swigum. I had the good fortune to hear Bob. He's the Chief Information Officer for the Georgia Department. He's got some guests with him. Bob, I'm going to let you introduce them.
Okay.
And then we'll let you get started right away. For those of you who haven't seen this presentation, I think you're going to be pleased. Bob, how long have you been on board now?
Since November of 2009.
November of 2009. So the $100 million we spent on this system before Bob got here, we cannot blame him for. So the output that we're getting now, I think you're going to be fascinated by this. Bob, you are on.
100 million won't touch it.
Well, thank you. What I'm going to do is just give you a brief outline of what we've done with the LDS system to date, and then we're going to have a demo, actually a live demo, if all the technology works right. And we have a principal, a teacher, and a district person from Hall County who will show you how they're actually using the system on a day-to-day basis. So, and if you have questions, just ask away. I love questions. So, I showed up here after a career with Georgia Pacific. So I'm a business person. So if I don't sound like an educator and I don't use the right acronyms, it's because I don't really know them. But I do know IT and I do know business. So what we did is, when I first got here, I was given my number one priority by Kathy to work on an LDS system, a longitudinal data system. And my first question was, what's that? And after she told me what it was, I started to try to find users to help me understand what I should do with this grant. This is not Race to the Top. This was a grant that was applied for, a competitive grant with the U.S. Department of Education. We received a grant to build a student longitudinal data system. We received a grant for $8.9 million to do that over the next 5 years, starting in 2009. So I started looking for my user base, and I finally found the user base out in the districts, a group called GSIS, which is the Georgia Student Information System Association, and they're the ones who manage all the local systems. So what we did is we used that group to help design this system. It actually is up and running. It's been up and running since last September. We announced it as a statewide system available last September, and to date we have 147 of the 187 districts up and running and installed. One of them's right here, right now. So I'm not going to take any more time. I'm going to let them go right into the actual demo, and you can see what we're delivering. So,
Introduce.
This is Anthony Swain from Hall County, and he's going to have to drive from there. Is it okay if he sits up there, drives?
Mike may not be working. He's had trouble with that mic, so you're going to have to yell it out.
I'll talk loudly.
And pull the mic up to you. It may be working now, but I don't think so.
That's fine. Yes, my name is Anthony Swim. I'm the IT coordinator from Hall County Schools. We use Infinity Campus as one of the several SIS vendors in the state of Georgia. The cool thing that Bob Switham's group did was develop this system where, regardless of what SIS you have, they implement this system where there's just one click directly from the system without any other login information. So if you can see on the left-hand panel, there's an SLDS button, and when I clicked on that button, it immediately takes me down to the tunnel to the state DOE warehouse. And as a district user, anybody at the district that I give access to, they have access to all the students, all the school's data that is possible there that the state has to offer. So my superintendent, the special ed department, all the coordinators that we have can see all the students, all the data on that system. As you can see, they see percentages, enrollment by school type the enrollment trends, they see withdrawal type, withdrawal trends, and most important is they see all the state assessments for the past 4 years, and I can see that for the entire school district as a level. So at this point, I want to bring up a principal and a teacher that can tell you how they use this in instruction. Okay, I'm going to log on as them so they can show you what they use.
While Anthony's doing that, I want to tell you, Anthony started out, Anthony, you were 12 years old with us. I'm proud of him. I'm glad to see it. He's brilliant. He's great. I'm glad he was with Gwinnett. We're proud of him. He's a great guy.
I agree.
Are you
Great guy. Great guy.
Are you Suzanne?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Introduce yourself, please.
Yes, sir. I'm Suzanne Gerard, principal of Chestatee Academy in Hall County, Georgia, and I appreciate so very much the opportunity to be here today to tell you how I use this system in my school. And then, of course, Michelle Rosales, who teaches at my school, will tell you how she uses it. And probably the way teachers use it is the most important, because I believe they're the most important thing in a school is the teacher and the success of the school. I would like to start by saying that this system saves me much, much time, which is a precious resource in a school setting. When I'm ready to do a presentation about how my school is doing, instead of going to dig through files and making my own electronic presentation, the data is ready for me, so that I simply can glance. I call it data at a glance, because I truly can look at it. I have a math background, but you don't even have to have a math background to understand the data that you see. It is before you, and you can clearly put it into a presentation. When I log on, as Anthony shows you here, a little hard to see with our eyes, but at any rate, I can see the enrollment of my school, and again, over the past 4 years, I see the data in one place, and I can't overemphasize the importance of seeing the data in one place for 4 previous years. That is untold in my position. You see the data, then you see the trends. I see my enrollment data, how my population has grown. As you go down, you continue seeing your data, your subgroup data. If you go on down, Anthony, you can see how I can compare my school for the past 4 years to see how many of my students as a whole have met standards, have not met standards, have exceeded standards, and then it goes further to compare my school to the state and to my district. And again, as you can see the color code there, green being exceeding, red meeting, not meeting, and then yellow with the meeting. Again, that's what I was referring to with, at a glance, you can see the color-coded data. Not only can I see this large data, I can then drill down to the student. I dare say that there is not a day now that I don't log on to this system to see different students. I can see a student that has transferred to me from another state or from another system within our district. Typically, we would have to wait for what the parent would bring, or we would have to wait for that school system to release that data. But if they've been in a Georgia school, I can simply, with one click, look at a student and see their data, see their achievement data for the last 4 years. I can see their enrollment data. I can see how oftentimes students that are having difficulty or lacking skills, they are lacking skills simply because they've enrolled in they've moved around a lot. So you can see that instantly at the click of a button. You can see their attendance data as well. So again, I know it's difficult for you to see here just sheer size of the presentation there, but the thing that is so important that I want you to see is that color-coded data that you can clearly see. One last thing before I move to my teacher to let her tell you more about how she uses it. I have before me a contract that we made for students that need extra help in remediation. I made a contract for students that are in these classes because we want those students to get in, but we also want those students to feel like that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that once they get into that remediation class that they're not stuck there until they master skills. So we made a contract with those students, and I was able to create, using this system and a click of a button literally, a piece of paper that has their enrollment data or their attendance data and then their performance on every single CRCT test for the past 4 years, and then they could utilize that data to make a goal for themselves. It would have taken me hours. In fact, I have to be honest and tell you that I probably would not have made it prior to this system, just with the sheer number of hours that it would have taken me to make a detailed contract per student.
And of course your teacher has access to all this information on a particular student.
She has. I have access to every single student. Yes, sir. And then she has access to her students in her class. So.
Now I think we're going to get to the parents after we hear from the teacher. I think she's going to go through that with the parents. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
You're leading into it, Kathy.
Right. Thank you again for your time today.
Michelle, if you'd introduce yourself again, please.
Yes, I'm Michelle Rosales. I'm a teacher at Chestatee Academy in Hall County. I'm also our instructional coach, our mathematics instructional coach, so I wear 2 hats. I teach in the morning, and then I work with a lot of math remediation and things like that in the afternoons. I love this system. We got it in October, and what's nice is, as Mr. Ard expressed, when we get a new student in our classroom, I can immediately look to see how they're doing, where their deficits are. When I do differentiation in my classroom, what group are they going to be best in? Things like that. I'm able to, when I look on, has Anthony pulled up my kids? Okay, great, thank you. The top shows you where my kids fall in my classroom. Well, I can actually click on my classes on the left and look at each of my individual students that way. On the right side, I can look at the attendance rate of my students, where that falls, and try to meet some needs there. If you'll go down some, Anthony. All right, if I look over, being a math teacher, the third block over is math, and I can look to see where my students fall that are coming to me as far as meeting the needs of the state CRCT, exceeding. What's nice is, like, I can click on 7% of my kids. I teach co-taught classes, so it's mixed with students with disabilities as well as the general population. I can click to see 7% of my kids exceeded state standards last year. When I'm questioning in my teaching, I know who do I need to make sure is being challenged to what their levels are. I can differentiate my questions. I know who to call on, which populations, which of my students didn't meet last year that are going to try to kind of hide in the woodwork, so to speak. They're gonna try to blend in. Who do I need to call on to make sure that they're truly getting it, because before they may not have been getting it. So it's really valuable. I very much like having this at my fingertips.
Michelle, help me out here. This is you utilizing the system.
Yes.
Now, the output of what we're all concerned about is with the student. And how are you using this data at this point to interface with the parents so they know what their child's progress has been, where their child's issues are, et cetera? Are you there yet, or is that too early in what you're doing with that at this point? If I want to know how my son's doing in your math class, where his strengths and weaknesses are you having discussions with the parents?
I can reference how they did last year. I can say, well, when they came to me, they had deficits in numbers and operations.
Okay.
We've worked on that on this quiz or just in my questioning. I've seen how they've grown. We won't know until we get the latest CRCT what the final result is, but I can tell them where they've come from on a phone call. I can call a parent and I can click on my computer and say, okay, this is what your scores were last year, the last few years. We've had 2 years where you haven't met the state standards. I can click to see that you were 2 points away from passing. Okay. You're close. We've got you in a remediation class to meet those needs.
You said, let's suppose a child moves into your school to Hall County from anywhere in the state.
Correct.
Did I hear us say that we have every school system involved in this?
Yes.
Where's my director that was, where is
There
he?
he is.
Every school system, any child in the state of Georgia, what grade do you teach?
I teach 6th.
That moves from the 6th grade anywhere in Georgia, they'll be in this database, right?
Yes.
Any child. So
Any child in the public schools.
that's what I'm saying, in the public, so every 180 school systems are involved in this.
Before, the issue was if I had a new student come to my classroom, I would have to give it a few days to kind of get a feel for them. I would go up to where we have all the students' permanent records. I would have to grab their folder. Depending upon how organized the folder was, I would have to look and search to find how did they do last year. I would have to do a lot of digging, which, of course, is outside of classroom time. And when you teach, I teach half-time, I have 60 kids. When I was teaching full-time, I have 120 kids to go through and try to find that data. And now to just be able to click is
Well, what
crazy.
bothered us for years is that they all weren't in there. We kept finding people. There would be one system or two systems weren't participating, so a child would move, and they still had to wait for the record. So you're assuring me right here today that all 180 school systems are involved.
Yeah.
That's great. Huh? What-
Because you got the school for the deaf.
The school systems send all their data to us.
Good.
Because we have to turn it into the federal government.
Right.
I've been doing this for 12 years.
Fantastic.
I have 12 years worth of data.
I mean, I'm glad. That's great. I
We've
feel
been
good.
waiting at least 12 years.
When she sees her data, as soon as a student enrolls in my district,
Right.
I grab the ETID through the DOE process. I upload the entire course file for our system that ties the student to her to the state
Good.
house where she can only see her students. Now you can see here the specific child that I pulled up. The teacher can see the entire enrollment history of that child, where they came from,
Fantastic.
why they were gone, any special ed services,
That's fantastic.
etc.
Now, let's back up 1 second. Now, Bob, just so we know, we've got the 4 years of data in here. Our game plan going forward. Okay, so eventually we're going to be going K through 16 or 20? Yeah, we're actually go through 20. Okay. All right. Is the game plan as we just keep adding as we go year by year by year? Is that correct? So, okay. So everybody understands that this is a gradual process, that my new grandchild that was just born, by the time they get in school, will be, at the end of the day, we're going to have this system in place after all these years. But I think from a technology standpoint, the applications here that are so critical is from a communication between the elevated school system, the principal, okay, we always talk about a great leader, with our teachers in the classroom, communicating with the parents. We're actually finally getting in the 21st century and actually using this data to help us make a child be better prepared to identify their weaknesses early on so we can deal with them, so we don't get these kids coming into 10th grade that are reading at a 3rd grade level. Okay, I think this has been the frustration, particularly if you live in an area where you've got a lot of kids going in and out. We've got some kids, folks, that they're in 5 different classrooms a year in this state.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that may not be where you live, but that's reality. And I think if I'm in Hall County, that would be very possible. Will you see? Is that a fair
Yes.
statement?
That's a very fair statement.
I don't know what your turnover is. What is your turnover in your school system?
We have the largest migrant population in the state.
And that was not, I did not ask him in advance, just for the record, okay?
But
Just,
I don't think our turnover rate is any more or less than any other district.
okay. Okay, so again, we're going to take a couple of questions if we can. We got all of you here.
Let me just ask, Bob, I just was handed a piece of information, a question I was just asked. Again, I hate to keep pushing that, but some systems don't participate in your system. That's true.
Right.
How do you get their data?
Their data has to be
Go to the
sent
state.
No, I know it goes to state.
every year to the state, so we can use
But is it instantaneously real-time data?
No.
That's the problem we're having. It's not, how late is it?
How late is
I mean, how many days delay before you get each system's data?
we collect data 3 times a year.
So it could be 6 months, 3 months. So we don't have real-time data on every system.
We don't have real-time data, and the process is, when we first started this, a lot of the comments were, don't make us do more work, don't make us send
I agree.
data. So we rolled out the system
Yes, sir.
data we have. The first request that we're getting back now is, can we add more data?
Yes, sir.
So we are putting together a system where districts can make their system as real time as they want. So if Hall wants to send their stuff every single day, their system will reflect that.
Well, my question to you is, Anthony knows we've been after this for 19 years. We want real-time data. Now, are we going to need to legislate that every system will be involved, or what do we need to do?
No, Race to the Top will do it.
Race to the top will do it? Will it? I'm just asking. That's our concern. We still don't have the real... I mean, I hate to put you on the spot. That's been our concern. We want real-time data.
I understand you want real-time data.
How do we get it?
I'll argue that you don't need real-time data for what you're talking about.
Okay.
Let him finish.
That's the point is real-time data is an awful expensive thing to pay for and to maintain.
Okay.
And when you look at the classroom environment, you don't really need near real-time data.
Okay.
Near.
Big difference between.
Okay.
If you look, there's 4 years worth of assessment data.
Okay.
And if
So we don't need it.
To her classroom today from Gwinnett County.
Or wherever.
She sees this data the next day.
Yes, sir.
And
And she's got real-time data,
well, assessment data, which is only one time.
which she doesn't care about. Yeah, which is fine.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I'm just saying, but
All right.
that's the argument I've been getting from a lot of parents.
Freddie, are you 14? Senator, are you 14? Who's 14, Linda?
You're right.
Senator Tibbins?
Let me understand. This information is available to all districts, but only 147. What's the 147 number? Are they not participating in the retrieval of that data?
What I have is a map here that I brought a handout for everybody. This is a map of Georgia.
Okay.
Green is installed, red is not, yellow is on the way. The reason that some districts aren't up and running yet is because the vendor has to get involved. The local vendor who manages the local student information system has to put in 5 lines of code in order to transfer to the state system. So everybody's working on this. That red should go away for the most part in the next month. Okay? So there's no barriers right now. Everybody's working hard to get on the system. So there's nothing that needs to be done from any kind of a mandate perspective because people are trying really hard to get there. So you'll see this, a green map, in a couple of months. Okay? So the thing that people feel like is the 147 are just the ones who are able to get their systems up and running right now. The remainder 40 are working to do that. And they just have some systems issues before they can get on the LDS system. So there's no problem.
So nobody has an opt-out.
It's a voluntary system. And as you can see, almost everybody wants to use the system. So it's worked great as a voluntary system because everybody is wanting to use it. So I guess what I'm trying to say, there's not a problem with the adoption rate inside of LDS. Very good.
Yeah, well, you know, one of the things as a legislature, as we get access to reports from these people, if we see that there's certain areas that are not using the system here on a voluntary basis, and they're not meeting the academic standards they're supposed to be meeting, i.e., IE squared or charter system, whatever it's going to be, then perhaps we can have some religious experiences with those particular systems. Kathy?
A real quick question. Thank you for this. We've been waiting a really long time, and it's exciting to see it happen. There's also this P20 data warehouse. Are y'all going to incorporate that into this K-12 system that's now working?
Well, that's being discussed right now as part of the Race to the Top effort, and it hasn't all been decided yet. So I can't really answer that.
May I express my strong hope that we do that so we don't rediscover wheels and that we really do have the littlest among us and those who are doing higher ed all in the same place at the same time.
I don't disagree with you.
Thank you.
Bob, I want to thank you all for coming, particularly you all for giving up your time for this today. And one of the things that...
Where's my parent access?
Oh, I'm sorry. You want to cover what you're planning to do with the parents? You want to do that, Bob? Or yeah, Bob is going to be our director and our parent of what they can look forward to this. And
The parents portal is, and I don't have a whiteboard, so I'm hand-tied, but if I could show you the local student information system where they do all their work, teachers and principals log on, do their work. We've created something over here called the LDS system. They don't have to log into it. They tunnel into it with the same credentials that they logged into over here. So for them, it's the same system. Off of that student information system hangs what's called a parent portal. It's part of that vendor solution. So in Hall County, they have Infinite Campus, which offers a parent portal. We will provide that same tunneling into the state system. So when you're a parent, you will see that little LDS button. When you press that, you will tunnel into all this data for your student. We haven't done that yet because we want to get all the systems up and running, and then schools familiar with it before we started opening it to parents. So that's where we're at with that.
In fact, what we're going to do, Kathy, we're going to probably both with this and Race to the Top, we're going to have them come back because I think all of us want some periodic updates on where they are and the progress they're making. So that before the end of the session, they're going to be back here again telling us where they are on these things. And again, Bob's available. I urge all of you, if you'd want a demonstration, his people will be happy to show you over at their offices. They did some earlier this week. And we've got a demo link here for you that you can get from Donna. And, of course, you can have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You showed us the red and said that they were not up yet. Is that Fulton County? That's what it looked like from here.
There's several metro districts.
And Douglas, the areas that I represent?
And the reason being, not because they don't want it.
It's the vendor.
It's because either their vendors aren't ready or they have a homegrown system. In the case of Fulton, they're working very hard to get it up and running. Clayton's working very hard, but they have to change their internal system. They don't even have a vendor. They write it themselves. So there's different nuances, especially in the metro area, which has more resources and they have a more complex environment.
So it's not available to us yet, but you're working on it for date certain? Which one? Where?
The vendors are working on it. We've done everything.
Oh, okay, I see.
Give them everything they can to hook up.
You need to talk to your local Board of Education is what he's politely telling you. Edward, I owe you a question.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, my question is a wrap-up question. When they're done, before we adjourn, just a broader question about today.
Do you have the map available for everybody? Yes, I have it. Yeah, you can pick your copy up when we're done so you can see if your school system is one of the ones on the list. Let's see. Vincent, did you?
Yeah. I think you may have answered my question because I was going to ask whether Race for the Top folk were going to come back because it's a monumental initiative, and I had a couple of questions for Ms. Haynes, and I'm glad we're going to be able to engage and ask questions and get more details because I had it's just my school system's involved and others, and I really would like to kind of dig deep.
And Bob will be available to you also. Just give him.
Representative Howard.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is on is all of the information that you're using based on CRCT and those standardized tests? And if so or if not, what about your schools, you have your semester systems and you have your grading systems where a parent may, I guess I'm going back to the real-time stuff, parents may want to know immediately or teach.
Benchmark test?
Yes.
State assessments on the system, your CRCT, end-of-course test. I think the plan and further is to I'm still
So the benchmark tests are not there. Is that a part of the goal? Okay, all right.
Okay. And Representative Setzer, you can wrap it up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I appreciate your coming today. I had a broader question to the chairman and for the members of the committee on Race to the Top. I think many of us agree with the stated goals of Race to the Top. I'm excited to see the progress. My concern sort of stems from something that Representative Ash started on, which was, these programs, which are ostensibly part of a 4-year project, which is to have us innovate, create systems, and then go away. When you consider that we've got hundreds of millions of dollars, I think $200 million they said at the state level to do the innovations over a 4-year period. That's at a wage rate plus benefits of $100,000 per person, that's 500 jobs times 4 years. It's 4 years times 500 FTEs at the state level for development, innovation, implementation. I think it's great. But when you look at that, what's going to happen at the end of, are all those jobs going to go away at the State Department, or are those going to be individuals that we're scrambling to find full-time roles for because they've been key contributors for 4 years? Good people all, I'm sure. I'm just concerned with what beyond this. And that the second thing I would just kind of close with, Mr. Chairman, is a concern that, Ms. Hames talked about the requirement for science to be our second AYP indicator.
Second AYP.
And that's a requirement that goes on indefinitely. What other indefinite requirements come as a result of taking what was otherwise temporary dollars? I am gravely concerned, and perhaps my concerns can be quelled if I hear otherwise. I'm just concerned that we're taking on full-time commitments for what was initially temporary dollars, which would frankly concern me if it were permanent dollars. I don't know we need to expand the scope and role of the federal government in our state's education system beyond spurring us to innovate. I think the innovation's great. I'm just concerned, and I've got some questions, Mr. Chairman, for another.
I guess the only response to that would be, it reminds me of the stimulus dollars that we all took to help make our budget last year, which we don't have this year, and now we're paying the piper because we're $1 billion short. I guess the good news is we've got the next 4 years to decide what our priorities are, and maybe a good example of that, Edward, would be from the next 2 years, we're going to be looking at, after 26 years, actually redoing our Quality Basic Education Act funding formula. So nobody has the crystal ball there. I think hopefully the data that we get out of this and what we learn from this, the resources we have, we can use more wisely. I'm reminded by those economists that came and testified at various hearings that this budget shortfall we're talking about today, it's not here just for today. We've got several years of this budget shortfall going forward. So you've raised some very valid issues, and I don't have the crystal ball either. But I think the good news is, if as a result of this, we learn to use our dollars more effectively, and that we actually can see that we're actually increasing academic performance, because the bottom line is, in this state, employers aren't happy because our students are not qualified to come in and take jobs, number one. And number two, parents aren't happy because they're getting tired of reading about 46, 47, and 48. So I guess 4 years from now, if you're here and I'm not, you're going to be able to answer that question. So with that, we will that.
Just one last thing. We have not had an opportunity, Mr. Chairman, either the Senate or the House Education Committee, to ask questions of the governor's office about race.
That's correct.
This was a purely executive agency initiative, and even though we didn't have a lawmaking role, there's been no substantive questioning. I think we've got a lot of questions. So if we could meet.
And on that note, we will say amen. We thank you all for attending.